She froze, her breath hitched as her eyes locked onto him, standing there in the golden light of the palace hall, so alive, so impossibly real. Her hand trembled as it brushed the faded photo on the wall, the one she had stared at for years in silence, the one where his smile had once lit up the royal gardens, and whispered, almost inaudibly, "Tum tum hum, tums indineho sake." The words hung in the air, fragile as glass, as memory had crashed over her like a tidal wave. Flashbacks flickered in her mind. The whispered secrets of servants, the hidden letters in the royal library, the cold night when betrayal had taken him from her arms. Every step he took toward her was a heartbeat, every pause a lifetime of doubt. "Why are you here?" She finally choked, her voice cracking under the weight of shock and forbidden hope. He looked into her eyes she thought she'd never see again. And for a moment, the world stopped. He whispered a name only she remembered, a name that could unravel the very crown she wore. My never left, my queen. I was always watching, always waiting. Tears blurred her vision as the palace walls seemed to close in with the weight of centuries of secrets. The royal family's darkest sins. The disappearances, the lies, the hidden rooms filled with forbidden truths, unfolded in her mind like a haunting melody. And then the revelation hit her like lightning. The man she had mourned, the man declared dead, was not who everyone believed him to be, yet he was exactly who she had loved. Her heart broke and soared at the same time, the line between betrayal and destiny blurring. The camera pans to the final shot. She reaches out, trembling, and he takes her hand, their fingers interlocking as the palace chandeliers flicker like dying stars. She whispers, "So it was never over, was it?" And he smiles, a sorrowful, knowing smile, leaving viewers suspended between heartbreak, awe, and the ancient truth that sometimes love and mystery refuses to die. Queen's eyes widen, her handling as it hovered over the grand velvet curtain, her heart hammering against her chest like a war drum. She looked at the man standing before her, tall, impossibly familiar, with the same haunting gaze that had haunted her dreams for years. And then her gaze darted to the faded, cracked photo on the palace wall, the same face, the same eyes, her lips parted, and a whisper escaped. Fragile and broken. "How can this be? He's dead." The words lingered in the heavy palace air, vibrating like the echo of a forbidden secret. Her knees nearly buckled as memories of that fateful night rushed back. The storm raging outside the palace walls, the shouts of guards, the betrayal she had never fully understood, the cold realization that he had been taken from her forever. And yet, here he stood, more real than the golden chandeliers, more alive than the whispers in her chambers. Every instinct screamed danger, disbelief, and longing all at once. She remembered the letters she had found in the secret drawer of the old library. Letters sealed with his hand and addressed to her, never sent, never read by anyone, each line a promise, each word a heartbeat she had thought lost forever. Her mind raced, trying to reconcile the impossible. The man she had mourned, the one who had vanished without a trace, was here breathing the same air, looking at her with a mix of recognition and something darker, something she couldn't yet name. He stepped closer, slow, deliberate, as if measuring the distance between her fear and her hope. Queen Io, his voice trembled, thick with memories and unshed tears, and she felt a strange pull, a gravitational force that made her want to both run and collapse into him. Her chest ached with the weight of years lost. The stolen nights, the whispered, "I love you," she had never heard in the open. The palace, once a sanctuary, felt like a trap now. The walls echoing with centuries of secrets, the floors creaking under the ghosts of the past. She blinked, trying to steady herself, but the memory surged again. The hidden corridors, the secret meetings she had once had in shadows, the whispered warnings of servants who had seen things they weren't supposed to. The hushed rumors of his death, it seemed so absolute, so final. Her mind spun with questions. How had he returned? Who had hidden him? And most haunting of all, Why now? He reached out, a tentative gesture, and she felt her breath hitch as his fingers brushed hers. The air around them seemed to thrum with unspoken truths. You were never gone, she whispered, her voice barely carrying above the silence that swallowed the hall. His eyes glimmered, a storm of regret, sorrow, and something fierce she had never seen before. I had to stay away, he murmured, voice breaking, for your safety, for all of us. They wanted to destroy everything, our family, our legacy, even us. Her heart twisted, torn between relief and rage, the betrayal cutting as the dagger she had imagined in countless sleepless nights. She remembered the cold, empty bed she had slept in, the loneliness that had carved lines into her face, the endless questions with no answers. And now the answers were here in front of her, alive and aching with their own weight. She stepped back, fear mingling with hope, and her eyes caught the photo again, the very image that had haunted her for years. The same smile, frozen in time, now mirrored by the living man before her. The walls of the palace seemed to close, those in the chandeliers swaying as if echoing her heartbeat. She wanted to scream, to demand the truth, to tear down the illusion that had governed her life, but her voice refused to obey. He took another step closer, unwavering. His eyes locked onto hers, pulling her into the vortex of a fate she hadn't dared imagine. Queen, I never left, he said, voice thick with unshared emotion. I was always watching, always protecting, even from the shadows. The revelation hit her with the force of a storm. Everything she had believed, the deaths, the betrayals, the lies whispered behind closed doors was a mask. The real story, the true horror and miracle standing before her, alive, defying every law of reason, destiny, and time. Tears blurred her vision, hot and unrelenting, as the weight of grief, love, and betrayal collided within her. All these years, I thought I lost you forever, she choked, the words tasting like ash and honey. He reached for her, and this time she didn't step back. Instead, she let herself fall into the whirlwind of emotions, into the embrace of the impossible truth. The palace seemed to hold its breath. Every secret it had ever kept, every hidden corridor, every silent witness, all converging in this one. Heart stopped a moment, and as their hands finally clasped, a shiver ran through her, a mixture of relief, heartbreak, and awe, because she realized something devastating and beautiful all at once. Love, destiny, and mystery refused to die. Even when the world says they must, she rested her forehead against his chest, whispering once more, so it was never really over, was it? And for the first time in years, the palace felt alive again, not with grandeur or power, but with a truth so raw, so forbidden, so eternal, that would haunt her forever, leaving viewers suspended between disbelief, longing, and the haunting question, what if the impossible is real? The queen's pulse raced as the man took a slow step closer, each movement deliberate, almost predatory, yet filled with an eerie familiarity that made her knees tremble. Enough. She could feel the heat of his presence, the same warmth she had once known, yet something off, almost intangible, like a shadow walking in sunlight. Enough. Her eyes darted across the room, from the gilded walls to the ornate mirrors, searching for some clue, some confirmation that what she saw was real. Enough. But the reflection staring back at her only deepened her confusion. He looked alive, impossible alive, but his face carried a shadow, a weight she could not place, a story her mind could not reconcile. Her throat tightened, and 1,000 questions swirled in her mind, colliding with memories she had buried so deep she thought they would never resurface. Oh, who are you? She whispered, but even as the words left her lips, she realized they were both absurd and necessary. Every instinct screamed that this was the man she had loved, the man whose death had shattered her world. But every logical thought screamed impossibility. He was supposed to be gone. Her heart waged a silent war against her mind. Every beat screamed familiarity. Every thought screamed deception. The man's gaze held her in place, dark and unreadable, yet flickering with something she could not yet name. Fear, regret, or a truth too dangerous to speak. A memory surged like lightning the stormy night when he vanished, the screams in the palace corridors, the hushed whispers that claimed he was dead before her eyes. She remembered the coffin, the public mourning, the hollow proclamations that tried to erase him from history. And now, here he was stepping through the hall she had walked alone for years, as if fate had twisted, turned, and finally returned him to her. Her mind grasped for logic, for explanation, but the palace around her seemed to dissolve into shadows, each flicker of candlelight reflecting questions with no answers. She remembered the secret passages she had once stumbled upon, hidden behind tapestries leading to rooms locked for decades, rooms that had whispered of forbidden meetings, hushed conversations, and secrets that could topple kingdoms. Was he connected it to those secrets, even hiding there all this time, playing a game she could not yet understand? The queen's hands gripped the edge of the marble table, knuckles white, as her inner thoughts spun into a cyclone of fear, disbelief, and reluctant hope. He took another step, and the air between them seemed charged electric, as if the palace itself was holding its breath. Her mind flashed to a letter she had once found, unsigned and hidden in the library, a letter that spoke of betrayal, of a shadowed figure watching her, protecting her from unseen danger, yet never revealing himself. Could this man be that shadow? Her chest tightened, each breath a struggle as the realization hit that she could not trust her own memories, every story she had told herself about that night. Every whispered secret of the royal family suddenly seemed unreliable. Who had claimed him dead? Who had lied, and why? He finally stopped a mere step away, close enough for her to see the faint tremor in his hands, enough, the subtle flicker of emotions that betrayed his controlled demeanor. You're not supposed to be here," she whispered, though the words were meaningless, powerless against the storm of questions raging inside her. His eyes glimmered, almost mocking, almost pleading, but the queen could not decipher a single truth. The cut of his coat, the way he held himself, the small scar she had once noticed on his hand, made her certain he was the man she thought dead. Yet every shadow in the room, every flicker of light, whispered deception. She felt dizzy, trapped between memory and reality, love and terror, trust and suspicion. Her heart screamed recognition, her mind screamed danger. He spoke then, voice low, measured, carrying a weight made her blood run cold. "Queen, there are things you don't know, things I cannot explain, not yet." And in that moment, the walls of the palace seemed to close in, the chandeliers flickering as if the very building itself sensed the tension, the secrets about to unravel. She remembered the whispered warnings of servants long gone. Enough. Tales of hidden enemies within the palace, the strange disappearances, the hushed conversations that had always seemed irrelevant until now. Were they all connected to him? And feel enough. Had he been part of a plan she could never have imagined? Her gaze shifted back to the old photograph on the wall, and a shiver ran down her spine. The resemblance was undeniable, but the shadow behind his eyes was unfamiliar, as if the man before her carried a past that had been erased, rewritten, or hidden from her forever. The queen felt a cold knot of fear settle in her stomach, curiosity mingled with dread, a dangerous cocktail that made her want to step forward and run away at the same time. Her fingers brushed the edge of a gilded frame, the only anchor in a room filled with impossible questions, and she whispered to herself, almost pleading, "If this is you, then why?" And the man's lips curved into a faint, almost sorrowful smile, a smile that promised answers and danger in equal measure. "Because some truths are too dangerous to speak aloud," he said, voice barely above a whisper, and the queen realized, with a shock that made her knees quake, that the story she had believed her entire life, the story of his death, of the betrayal of the palace itself, was only the beginning. The rest, the true story, feel enough, was hidden in the shadows between them, waiting to be revealed, waiting to shatter everything she had held as real, and leaving the viewer suspended, breathless, unable to look away, desperate to know the identity of the man who had returned from the dead and the secrets he carried that could destroy an empire or restore a love thought lost forever. Enough. At the moment his words echoed in the silent hall, the queen's vision blurred, and suddenly she was no longer in the present. The golden chandeliers, the heavy velvet curtains, polished marble floors dissolved, replaced by the soft, warm glow of a memory long buried. She was younger, radiant, walking barefoot through the palace gardens, the scent of jasmine and rose mingling in the air when he had appeared, stepping from the shadows with that same impossible smile that now haunted her. Year late, he had teased, his voice low, teasing familiar, and her heart had skipped, betraying her composed royal exterior. They had laughed then, chased each other among the fountains, and she remembered the way he had caught her hand, fingers curling around hers like a promise that nothing could break. Enough. Every stolen glance across the grand dining halls, every whispered word in his lip by candlelight had been a spark in a world where rules and protocol ruled every action. The queen recalled how they had hidden their connection from the prying eyes of advisors and courtiers, a delicate dance of closeness and secrecy, every touch and glance a rebellion against the suffocating palace walls. She remembered the small gestures that had meant everything, the notes slipped into her books, the flowers left outside her door, the way he always seemed to know when she felt alone, even when surrounded by nobles and sycophants. And then the weight of reality intruded. Enough, the very real danger of their love, forbidden by duty and expectation. There had been night hours when the core alive with whispers of plots, secrets, and schemes. And he had stood guard, always silent, always watching, making sure that no one discovered the bond they both knew could destroy them. She remembered the summer balls, the golden halls alive with music louder and the delicate perfume of high society, and how he had pulled her into a quiet corner away from the pomp and whispered words meant only for her ears, promises of forever, and yet the shadow of doubt always lingered. Who could trust a palace built on intrigue? Her mind flickered to the night of the secret balcony meeting when the moonlight painted his face silver and their hands had touched, lingering, desperate for connection. And she had sworn then that she would protect him no matter the cost. The flashback deepened. She remembered the council meeting she had been forced to attend, eyes downcast, while he, appearing to serve the kingdom loyally, had caught her gaze across the room, a silent conversation passing between them that no one else could see. And there were the hidden letters tucked behind the paneling, and then the library filled with words of longing and strategies to navigate the treacherous waters of court life. The ink smudged by hurried fingers and tears she had not yet known were hers to shed. She saw the night when the betrayal first appeared. Guards rushing through corridors, voices raised in alarm, the flash of torches lighting up, faces twisted with anger and fear, and him disappearing into shadows before she could reach him. Enough, she remembered the fear that had gripped her, a cold, paralyzing dread, as rumors of his death spread, as the palace mourned a man she had secretly known to be alive. The flashback twisted darker. She recalled the hidden chambers he had shown her, rooms behind bookcases and secret doors where maps, old letters, and artifacts of the royal family's hidden history were kept, and how he had whispered to her that some truths were too dangerous to reveal, that some enemies could strike from within, and that her life and the crown depended on secrets she could barely understand. She felt the sting of betrayal, the agony of love suspended in fear, and yet even that memory, the warmth of his hand, the intensity of his gaze, the unspoken connection between them made her pulse race as though the past itself were alive, demanding to be felt, demanding recognition. The corridors of the palace seemed alive again in her memory, filled with louder whispered confessions and the unbreakable bond they had shared, a bond built in shadows, strengthened in secrecy, and tested by forces she had only begun to understand. And as the flashback faded, the queen realized with a shiver that the man before her was not just a ghost of the past. He was the keeper of all the hidden moments she had cherished and feared, the embodiment of a love and a secret that had survived the walls of the palace, survived time, and now stood before her demanding answers, demanding truth, and forcing her to confront the unresolved questions of their past. The memory left her trembling, heart aching with longing, fear, fear and the unbearable curiosity of what had happened to him during all those years, what secrets he carried, and how the past impossibly had returned to the present, enough ready to unravel the delicate balance of Palace life and her own carefully guarded horror eyes. The hall returned, the chandeliers glittering again, the marble floors solid beneath her feet, and he was still there, silent, waiting, watching. And for the first time, the queen understood that the past they had shared was far more than memory. It was a key, a warning, and a mystery she had no choice but to confront. The queen's eyes kept flickering between him and the old photograph on the wall, the one that had been a silent witness to her grief for years, the one where he had smiled in a sunlit courtyard, unaware that the world would soon declare him dead. That smile, the same tilt of his lips, the same glint in his eyes, enough, yet now tinged with shadows that spoke of secrets no photograph could ever capture. Her fingers brushed the gilded frame almost instinctively, as if touching it might anchor reality, might tell her that what she saw was real and not some cruel hallucination conjured by longing and desperation. The whispers of the palace seemed to swell around her, as if the walls themselves remembered that long-lost man, the man whose absence had been mourned with pomp and ceremony, whose death had been recorded in journals, decrees, and public statements meant to erase him from history. Yet here he was, standing before her, more alive, more dangerous, more impossible than anything she could have imagined. Her mind raced, piecing together fragments she had long ignored, the letters never delivered, the servants who had whispered in corridors about shadows moving in the night, the strange disappearances of palace guards who had once been loyal to him. And she remembered the day the photograph had been taken, the laughter of a private garden, the sunlight streaming through carved windows, the way he had held her hand and whispered promises of a future that seemed eternal until betrayal and fate had intervened. Everyone had believed him dead. They had buried him, celebrated his demise, and reshaped the history of the royal family around that absence. But the photograph, frozen in time, had always whispered the truth. There were layers to his life. Threads of a story the palace would never admit, threads that now converge in the room with him, alive, breathing, and staring at her as if nothing had changed. Her breath caught as she realized that he was not merely returned. He had survived, hidden, transformed, perhaps even hunted, and yet here he stood, holding the same essence she had loved, but carrying a burden that no one else could imagine. She remembered how, after his supposed death, the palace had thrummed with whispered theories, some claiming he had been executed for treason, others insisting he had fled into exile, perhaps betrayed by someone closest. And now, standing in front of her, the man seemed to mock those whispered lies, showing her that the truth had been far more intricate, far more dangerous, and far more deliberate than she had ever suspected. The photograph and the man together formed a riddle she could not yet solve, a puzzle of life and death, loyalty and betrayal that tugged at her very soul. Her eyes narrowed as she studied him, noticing the subtle changes, a scar she didn't remember, a shadow beneath the eyes, a stiffness in his posture that hinted at years of survival and caution, the faintest tremor in his hand that betrayed unspoken horrors. Each detail contradicted and confirmed her memory simultaneously, weaving a web of confusion and curiosity that made her stomach churn. She wanted to ask him, to demand answers, to know how he had returned, but words caught in her throat, stifled by shock and an unnameable fear that the answers could shatter the delicate reality of her world. The palace, and usually so solid, seemed to sway, the chandeliers flickering as if in sync with the turmoil inside her. She could almost hear the silent testimony of the photograph, insisting that life had hidden truths from everyone, truths too dangerous to speak, truths that were now embodied in him, the impossible survivor. He moved slightly, a step closer, and she noticed how the light caught his face, casting shadows that mirrored the contours of the photograph, yet distorted by time, experience, and secrets. Everyone thinks you're dead, she whispered, her voice trembling, almost pleading, almost accusing. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he let silence stretch between them, heavy with meaning, thick with the weight of unspoken years. And in that silence, the queen realized the truth that had eluded her for so long. And death in the palace had never been certain. Truth had always been a matter of perspective, and loyalty, love, and survival often danced in shadows invisible to all but those who dared to look closely. He finally spoke, voice low and deliberate, each word a calculated tremor that shook her from within. He wanted everyone to believe it, to erase me, to bury not just my body, but my story. But some things cannot be erased, some bonds cannot be broken, and some truths find a way to return. The weight of his words pressed on her chest, making it hard to breathe, to think, to distinguish reality from illusion. She glanced back at the photograph again, at the frozen moment of light and laughter, and felt the impossible connection tighten between past and present, memory and truth, image and living man. The palace seemed to lean closer, listening, waiting, as if it too knew the magnitude of the revelation that the man everyone had mourned as dead had defied history, had returned from shadows, and now demanded the queen confront the consequences of hidden lies, family betrayal, and the love that had refused to die. Her fingers lingered on the photograph as tears welled, the metallic edge cold against her skin, grounding her in a reality she could barely grasp, and yet undeniable. The man she had thought lost forever was here, tethered to a past no one else remembered, carrying secrets that could unravel the very fabric of the royal family, and forcing her to face a truth that had been invisible until this impossible moment. And as the distance between photograph and man closed in her mind, the queen realized with a shiver that ran from crown to soul that everything she had been told, everything she had believed about life, death, loyalty, and love was only the surface. Beneath it lay a deeper, darker story waiting to reveal itself, waiting to pull her into a mystery from which she might never emerge unchanged.